Hello, everyone, and welcome back to The Missing Link. I'm your host, Shane Buell, and in this video, I'm going to be talking about the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, originally titled Transforming Our World. I meant to cover this topic a while ago, but with the recent global acceleration towards digital IDs, central bank digital currencies, 15-minute cities, and discouraging private automobile travel, we're running out of time to make people aware of what's really going on. Okay, so I recently touched on this in the Philippines video that I did, and we've also covered this extensively on Tracy's channel, even just recently. But there's been an acceleration in the plans, and I need to get ahead of this before it's too late. We're already seeing, as of January 1st, people in Texas are going to be required to sign up for their digital ID just to use the internet. U.S. District Judge Robert Pittman issued a preliminary injunction against the law, stating it's more likely than not unconstitutional. The judge compared the law to requiring bookstores to check IDs for every customer, emphasizing its overreach. So we got to keep an eye on this Texas digital ID case because this could set the precedent for the other states which may follow suit. And other countries have already started to implement this. So by January 1st, we're already seeing several countries around the world marching in lockstep to implement digital ID for the UN 2030 Agenda. So while the specifics of the 2030 Agenda go back to the UN Sustainable Development Summit of 2015, it's really just an acceleration of Agenda 21, which was born out of the Rio Earth Summit in 1992, which itself is just a culmination of ideas from malevolent Malthusians at the UN and World Economic Forum, like Klaus Schwab, Henry Kissinger, and Maurice Strong. So the United Nations Summit for the adoption of the post-2015 development agenda was held from September 25th to the 27th of 2015 in New York and convened as a high-level plenary meeting of the General Assembly, aka bigwigs. At the three-day summit on sustainable development in 2015, more than 150 world traders gathered at the United Nations headquarters in New York to formally approve an arrogant new agenda for sustainable development. The new ploy, called Transforming Our World, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, included a declaration of 17 sustainable development goals and 169 targets. The goal of the ploy, to find new ways to impair the lives of the world's people, to advocate poverty, to prohibit prosperity and well-being for all, to procure the environment, and to fight with weather warfare, against climate change. 2 months later, at the 2015 Paris Conference on Climate Change, also known as COP21 or Co-op21, the Paris Agreement was signed and then ratified by 187 parties. There has been numerous inputs to the agenda, notably a set of sustainable development goals or shameful divestment goals proposed by a closed think tank of the General Assembly, the report of a treasonous collusion of shills on shameful divestment, and dialogues on technology or tech apology facilitation, and many others. So since this document was written in a sort of globalist legalese, I'm going to go ahead and translate the introduction for you. We, the heads of Hydra, or state and government, meeting at the Hydra headquarters in New York in September 2015 as the organization celebrates its 70th anniversary, have decided today, without your knowledge or consent, on new global shameful divestment goals. On behalf of the people we shirk, we have concocted a historical decision on a comprehensive, overreaching, and people-countered set of universal and transformative goals and targets. We commit yourselves to working tirelessly for the full imposition of this agenda by 2030. We will also build upon the achievements of the Millennium Development Goals and seek to address their unfinished business, also known as Agenda 21. We resolve between now and 2030 to institute poverty and hunger everywhere, to compound inequalities within and among countries, to build peaceful, just, and inclusive societies, to prohibit human rights and promote gender neutrality, and to ensure the lasting predation of the planet and its natural resources. As we embark on this grading collective journey, we pledge that everyone will be taken. Recognizing that the dignity of the human person is fundamental, we still wish to see the goals and targets met for all nations and peoples and for all segments of society, and we will endeavor to grab the furthest behind first. Side note, the phrase human person is used intentionally here in accordance with Black's Law Dictionary definitions of both human and person, hence their additional use of the word society there. From Black's Law Dictionary, quote, human, monster, a prodigious birth, a human birth or offspring not having the shape of mankind, which cannot be heir to any land, even though it be brought forth in marriage. Person, a man considered according to the rank he holds in society, with all the rights to which the place he holds entitles him and the duties which it imposes. A human being considered as capable of having rights and of being charged with duties, while a thing is the object over which rights may be exercised. So, according to their legal definitions, the logical conclusion is that a human person is legally defined as a monster not having the shape of mankind, which cannot be heir to any land, and is only considered capable of having rights according to the place he holds in the society that entitles him and the duties which society imposes. Basically, he owns nothing, not even himself, so long as he is the object over which rights may be exercised, and is only entitled to natural born rights based on the rank and duties the society imposes on him. This form of illegitimate corporate law is the antithesis of natural law because it lacks informed consent and steals the freedom of choice, a violation of liberty called fraud. It steals income and property through non consensual taxation and seizure, violations of property called extortion and theft, and it perpetrates that extortion and theft via threats of imminent deadly force, a violation of life called murder. These few examples alone demonstrate it to be objectively immoral and unethical, which justifies speaking and defending against it. This is an agenda of unprincipled scope and significance. It is accepted by all countries, but is applicable to all, without taking into account different national realities, capacities, and levels of development, and respecting national policies and priorities. These are universal goals and targets which devolve the entire world, developed and developing countries alike. The goals and targets are the result of over 70 years of intensive public consultation and collusion with governments and other corporations around the world, which paid particular attention to silence the voices of the poorest and most vulnerable. A few months later, on December 12th of 2015, the Paris Agreement was held at the UN Climate Changer Conference known as COP21, or Co-opt 21. World traders at the UN Climate Changer Conference, COP21 in Paris, reached a takeover on December 12th of 2015, the historic Disparaged Agreement, Paris Agreement. The agreement, or aggression, sets long-term goals to guile all nations, like substantially reduce global greenhouse gas emitters to limit the global temperature increase in this century, renew countries' commitments or concession tributes every 5 years, and to provide financing for divesting countries, to modulate weather warfare, strengthen resilience like Build Back Better, and enhance abilities to attack with climate impacts. The aggression is a legally blinding international treaty which entered into force on November 4th of 2016. Today, 194 traders have joined the Disparaged Agreement, which provides a durable framework for guiding the global effort for decades to come, and marks the beginning of a shift towards a net zero emissions world. Instigation of the aggression is also essential for the achievement of the Shameful Divestment Goals, or SDGs. The Disparaged Agreement works on a 5-year cycle of increasingly aggressive climate attacks carried out on countries. Every 5 years, each country is expected to submit an updated National Climate Action Plan, or attack plan, known as an NDC, or Nationally Determined Contribution, or Concession Tribute. In their NDCs, countries communicate actions they'll take to reduce their greenhouse gas emitters to reach the goals of the Disparaged Agreement. Countries also communicate in the NDCs the actions they will take to build resilience to adapt to the impacts of climate control. To better frame the efforts toward the long-term goal, the Disparaged Agreement incites countries to formulate and submit long-term strategies as well, but unlike NDCs, they are not mandatory. So now, with the Paris Agreement and Paris Rulebook legally blinding in 194 countries, the ploy was in place. Burn back better to grab the globe for a prison planet. So with all of that said, is there anything that we can do, either individually or collectively, to try and stop this? Well, yes, there actually is. For example, Costa Rica was planning a 15-minute city, or eco barrio as they were calling it, for the municipality of Perez Zeledón. Local officials were trying to pass it in secret, but the residents of the area got wind of this in early April and showed up en masse to protest at the city council downtown. One of the activists present was Dustin Bryce of Interest of Justice. He's a journalist and constitutional scholar who had legal paperwork drawn up that would force them to hold public testimony before actually finalizing the vote. Police had barricaded the doors to prevent the public from coming in and voicing their public testimony, but Dustin Bryce delivered his paperwork to one of the police there, who realized that it must be delivered to the politicians inside. And upon seeing the paperwork, they realized that they could not hold the vote without public testimony, and the vote was canceled. Since then, most of the local politicians have backed down from their position to support this, leaving only the mayor as the sole supporter. There's a lot of opposition to get him out of office, and when he leaves, the smart city leaves with him. We've also seen some temporary victories in Lahaina, Maui, and in the Palisades of Los Angeles. Lahaina, for example, has temporarily defeated their land grab bill, SB 3381, but it is going to be reintroduced again this year, so they need to keep an eye out for it. And the Palisades land grab bill, SB 549, has also been paused, but again will be reintroduced this year, so the local residents will have to stay on top of it to make sure it doesn't get passed behind their back. Now, in many places, it's already too late to implement a collective solution, so I want to give you guys some individual solutions that you can apply to your own lives in the meantime. I'll touch briefly on these and point you in the direction of some sources where you can learn more. One of those is a personal friend of mine since 2017. His name is Derek Brose. He's an investigative journalist and activist who has done several documentaries, including The Pyramid of Power, which is coming out soon, and a new mini documentary called Liberation 2030. He also holds an annual event in Morelia, Mexico called The People's Reset, which takes place from January 28th to February 1st in Morelia, Mexico. But it can also be viewed online, and I'll leave that link below.
Those are the kind of things that I think we need more of. And it's not that I'm the only person doing that. I've since met a lot of other movements in different parts of the world that are equally focused on, hey, what can we do ourselves? And I hope that there will be more of that coming in from the independent. Obviously as media, we play a role. That's one role. We're not necessarily all intended to be activists. This is actually a criticism I sometimes see that I think is not legit. People will say, okay, well, Whitney Webb or Redacted or Derek, you guys tell us all the problems, but what are we going to do about it? Well, that's not really a journalist's job. That's not the job of a journalist to tell you what to do. But for me as an activist, I do want to try to share that.
Yeah,
exactly. You don't need to report on something. You don't need to have a solution just to report on something. So I do think people haven't, they don't understand that that's not the role of journalists. But I also think we can, like you're giving me an opportunity right now, to try to shine a light on something that maybe will empower other people, right? How can we as journalists still try to highlight people or other solutions that we might think could be helpful for people? I think that's a role that journalists could play. And ultimately, it's up to people to take care of their own lives, right? Because anything you and I say, it can go in one ear and out the other. And if we could give somebody the 100% foolproof solution that'll change your life, but if they don't take it into their hands and take charge of their own life, it doesn't matter, right? So ultimately, people have to step up and say, you know what, I value my life enough, I value my family's lives enough, and I value the coming generations that I'm going to make some effort to try to help myself.
So when it comes to solutions, the first link I'm going to send you to is the interview that Tracy and I did with Derek, where he shares a variety of solutions that individuals can use to opt out of the technocratic state, which he wrote an entire book about, and I highly recommend. He shared various types of hardware and software that individuals can use to circumvent the surveillance of the technocratic state. One of which is called the Above Phone, which is a smartphone that's designed to be completely private, and it's actually more user-friendly than most of the other quote-unquote ghost phones that I've tried. Another idea that Derek has pioneered is called the Freedom Cell Network, which is a network of like-minded individuals that can come together in small groups of 6 to 8 people to teach each other skills and information, like how to become more self-sufficient by growing your own food and purifying your own water, or how to protect your own privacy by using the right hardware and software, such as apps like NewPipe, which allow you to privately view YouTube videos on your Above Phone or Ghost Phone, or AntennaPod, an open source app that allows you to subscribe to any RSS feed while maintaining privacy. There's also privacy-friendly search engine alternatives that don't track you, which can be found at nomoregoogle.com, and privacy-friendly alternatives to Google Drive at cryptpad.fr, which is end-to-end encrypted and open source. These are just some of the solutions that Derek offered in our interview with him, and I highly recommend watching the whole thing, which I will leave the link to below. Another video I recommend is Ben Jordan's recent video on gadgets for people who don't trust the government. He has a lot of do-it-yourself projects, some of which are currently out of my reach or over my head, but I will mention them briefly just in case any tech-savvy viewers want to give it a try. One of the things he mentions are using mesh nodes and repeaters to create mesh networks as a backup form of communication. which is what the Egyptian people did during the Arab Spring in January of 2011 when the Egyptian government tried to shut down the internet to stop a revolution. But through the use of mesh networks, the Egyptian people were able to bring communications and even the internet back online. And the victims of Hurricane Helene also used mesh networks to bring the communications and internet back up long before the major providers were able to do so. He also shows how to make flock camera detectors from parts that you can buy off of Amazon. Flock cameras are the surveillance cameras at the top of streetlights that are used to track the movements of traffic and individuals, and is allegedly how the FBI was able to track the movements of Tyler Robinson. And last but not least, he goes into something called stingray detectors. Stingrays are devices used for intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance by policy enforcers. These devices intercept your data by acting like a fake cell phone tower, and he shows some relatively inexpensive ways to detect these devices when they're in range. Okay, so this is far from a comprehensive list, but if you only do one thing in the near future to opt out of the technocratic state, let it be that you resist the digital ID, because that's what links everything to the central bank digital currencies and ultimately the social credit score. And then that's when they have you locked into their system. All right, so that's all I have for today, but stay tuned and I'll see you in the next one.